Welcome to episode 3.
Episode 3 of the season.
Episode 3 of the season. And I'm really excited about today's episode because basically I thought we should probably sort of address the elephant in the room. So I was wondering whether to stay during the podcast, was sort of confused. I know I said this before, but I've probably been through pretty devastating things in my life recently. Because you, Tiarna, has been so integral to kind of getting me back on my feet. And we're kindred spirits in the sense that you've been through a lot of things. And I'm not ready to talk about everything that I've been through yet. I thought it would be really good to have an episode where we introduce you properly to the listeners and we find out all about you. So today is all about Tiarna.
Exciting, Suze. It's slightly nerve-wracking and exciting because this means that I'm going to be the center of attention for this whole episode, right? Which is kind of nerve-wracking for me. But I'm looking forward to it because I know it means that the next episode will be me getting to know you.
Not necessarily. It's to be confirmed. But no, I think you do have a very interesting story and you've definitely added so much to the podcast. And I've been getting great feedback and stuff from the listeners. So let's find out more about you. How much are we going to get out of Tiarna today in the episode? So
I'm on the hot seat, Suze. I'm on the hot seat, aren't
I? You are in the hot seat. And normally we go very improv, but I have prepared about 11 questions for you. So let's start talking about recruitment first. So what I want to know is how long have you been in recruitment right now? Remind me, like a year and a bit?
No. So I've been in recruitment for coming up to just on 3 years now.
And I think it was when I first started talking to you, they were like, she's only been in recruitment a year. But those 3 years, you went into it brand new, completely different. Was there a point that you thought, you know what, I'm walking away?
Yes, is the right answer and the correct answer. I think if you speak to anyone in recruitment, that first 6 months is a huge roller coaster of emotions. And I think it was those first 6 to 8 months where I was constantly questioning, is this the right decision? So I left a really nicely paid job in the Netherlands when I moved to London to move into recruitment. So I took, I think it was a £35,000 salary cut to move into recruitment. So not only had I gone, for a year. So that was the difference because obviously in recruitment, we're not paid big bases, are we? We're paid small bases to then earn commission. And I knew that first 6 to 8 months, it was possible that I wouldn't bill. So it was just living off your bare basics. So there was definitely times where I was questioning, have I made the right decision? Is this the right step? Because you're living off very different lifestyles to what you're living. You're also learning so much every single day and it was exhausting at times. And then just when you start to feel like it's making sense, it doesn't make sense. And then you're relearning again. So there was a lot of moments where I definitely questioned, but there was always something inside of me that I loved and enjoyed about recruitment. So it kept me going. And there was always this kind of adrenaline that would run through me. But to answer your question, I did think about it. And sometimes you still do question, is this where you want to be forever? And is this the career that I want to have? And the answer is yes. Now I love what I do. And I love that I can work remotely. I love that I can have amazing relationships with my clients and candidates, but there is definitely days where you question everything.
I love that. And I think there will be people listening to this who may be thinking, is recruitment for me, who are in recruitment. So what would you say to them? What would you say to Tiarna in her low moment in recruitment who is considering walking away?
Well, I had this conversation with someone quite close to me recently who had that exact question actually. And I think with recruitment, you've got to love what you do and no job is perfect. But if you don't enjoy the day-to-day of recruitment, it's going to be a long 20 or 30 years of your life. So I would say, well, my advice to her was you've got to kind of first take some time to think about, do you actually enjoy your day-to-day and do you enjoy getting out of bed in the morning and the conversations you have with your clients and candidates? Does it give you energy? And if it's sucking your energy, then okay, maybe we need to start thinking about what else you could do. But if you're energized by building relationships and if you're energized by it's a constant wheel we're on in recruitment because all of a sudden you go from having a pipeline down to zero and you've got to love building yourself back up constantly and it's tiring and it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of drive and a lot of discipline. So I would say, I think write it out, right? Because we all have good and bad days. And this is kind of what I did say to her, actually. I said, I think you've got to write it out. There's no point making an impulsive decision when it's too soon and you're just having a crappy week, which we all have. If you're having crappy months, okay, fine. But I think you've got to ride the good and the bads in recruitment. It's what do they say? It's razor blades and champagne. It's so true because some days it's like champagne, everything's great. Other days it generally feels like you're swallowing razor blades because nothing's landing, nothing's making sense. The market's turned, everyone's nervous. Trump's launching tariffs. Like, what next? So I think write it out. I always say, and I always say this, I think we spoke about this so much in the podcast, is speak to your like community, get a mentor, get someone that can give you energy or someone just to bounce those negative thoughts off. Because you might just find by talking through it, you'll actually overcome the issues you have with your boss or with the work or with the culture at your office and find a way to refocus.
I love that. And one thing I would say, don't become a tired recruiter because
Yes.
there's so many people out there who have said they wanted to leave recruitment for years and they're still in recruitment. They're stuck in it because of the money. Don't become a tired recruiter. Find another job if you get to that point. And many do. Many do.
Yeah. And it's never too late to make a change, right? I think that was something that I was questioned on a lot when I was changing careers at 33. Everyone's going, you're crazy. You should be staying in your role as a manager. I wasn't happy in my role as a manager. So yeah, don't become tired. Exactly that in your role. If you're tired, you need to reassess what's going to help you get energy again.
So true. What does give you energy? What does light you up in the morning? One thing I'm curious to know, because I think you're quite a moral, ethical person. Does anything about recruitment necessarily go against who you
Oh,
are, would you say?
that's juicy. That is juicy, Suze. Do you know what it is? I think I wouldn't say it goes against, I'm always quite honest. I always try to be as honest as possible, but you are managing multiple different stakeholders in recruitment, right? So I think sometimes you're being told information and you're delivering it, and it maybe doesn't land to the candidate how the client explained it to you. So there's often a question around that's not what the role was, and that's not. I went into the interview and the role is completely different to what you said. And that makes me feel sick because it looks like I've made something up, which isn't true. But somewhere along the conversations or the time that's been going on, there's been wires crossed, which does happen a lot. I think you might experience this as well, Suze, where things change or a new leader comes and then all of a sudden they have an internal conversation. They haven't updated us that the roles change. And then we're still pitching the same role that's no longer the existing role, right? So that makes me feel a bit sick because I do feel like I'm leading my candidates down the wrong path. And I think where I come from in a customer success background, it's the customer's always right. And you're always there to please the customer. Whereas I think in recruitment, you've got to kind of push back and break people down a little bit in the nicest way possible. And you never take no for an answer. So I think that sometimes is a bit of a moral compass for me because normally you want to kind of please people and move on to the next. Whereas in recruitment, that's actually the opposite to what you need to do. If someone says no to you, it's about how do I understand why and how do I make them seek to understand why they're saying no. And that comes with a lot of resistance sometimes, and it can be really uncomfortable because you're having these awkward conversations and you're thinking, am I asking the right questions? And when's the time to stop? And you don't want to become too salesy, but you also are trying to build that connection with that person. So
I love that. I love that. Saying when someone says no, seek first to understand. And you can seek first to understand whilst listening. It's the salespeople who seek to understand and ask the questions, but they're not actually listening who fail. It's a really good point you made. And I think, you know what, like ultimately in any role, there's always going to be times, especially when you're the middleman, that you are saying something and communicating something that doesn't actually end up to be completely true. But do you know what? I always think about this because when Luke was training me initially and I was doing headhunting calls, I always remember calling out one education recruiter and they put me on loudspeaker and basically swore down the phone to me. And I'm wondering, I've got quite a few instances like this, but I'm wondering, in your 3 years, has a client or a candidate ever made you feel really small?
yeah, definitely. I think I've been sworn at once actually, Sue, so I can relate to that feeling of it's quite shocking, isn't it? Because you're not expecting it and they're obviously having a bad day and that's their problem, not mine, as far as I'm concerned. But there's never a reason for someone to swear at you, especially when they don't even know you and you're actually just calling to have a conversation so lightly. So you know what happened at the very beginning? This came up the other day when I was speaking to someone. When you're really new in recruitment, I think it's sometimes quite obvious, you're quite green. And I would have come into the recruitment quite green. And I was going on meetings with clients with Andrew, which was my old boss at the time. And we'd be in these boardroom meetings with all of these men, right? I'm the only female in the room. And what used to happen was I would ask a question, or my one objective of that meeting was just get one question in because naturally Andrew would be leading the meetings. And it's really hard when you're juggling multiple people addressing a client. So he would often lead and I would just say, just ask one question. So I'd ask my one question to a client in the meeting. And what would happen in, not all the time, but in some instances, and especially at the beginning, so they would address me with their back and they would answer the question to Andrew. It's like I wasn't there.
No.
And I used to leave these meetings going, it's because I'm a female. It's because I'm a female. They're disrespecting me because I'm in this room with these white men in this boardroom and they're disrespecting me because I'm a female. And then That was my insecurities playing in my mind. And it used to get me quite, sometimes I get quite upset by it actually. And I even spoke with Andrew about it on multiple occasions because their tone would be very different to him than it was to me. They would just disregard me, which is not okay, right?
It was because you're a woman, though. Do you think it was?
Well, I think now that I reflect on it, I think it was because I was quite green and because I was quite new. I think it was almost like a time efficiency thing. They were just like, I can quickly have this conversation with him because he's going to understand more. But it did cross my mind on many times whereby I thought, is it because I'm a female and they're not addressing me with respect because I'm like a young female? And it did make me think that's kind of disrespectful. And I even had one client once that said to me, he said, quote, "You need to stop digging your heels in the sand and let me speak to your boss." And I thought, you wouldn't have said that to a guy, would you? Like it was quite condescending. So I've had that very more when I was newer, which makes me now think perhaps when I was new in my career, people sniffed out that I was new and they maybe took advantage. Hasn't happened as much that I'm a little bit more experienced. But yeah, I definitely felt uncomfortable in those moments because your imposter syndrome kicks in and then you start to feel really small and you think, why are you speaking to me like that? And actually don't speak to me like that, which is actually when I got more confidence. A couple of times I would say, oh, well, actually, and Andy was really good at navigating it. And he would almost look back at me when they would ignore me and really address the room. And I would say, oh, sorry, I asked the question, you can answer me. When I had the confidence to do so, it was quite scary, actually, because you're having to
Yeah.
address 70, 60-year-old men in a room that often, I guess, show disrespect, if I'm being honest, if really what happened.
Definitely, definitely. And I can totally get that. I've had that before myself,
Have you
but
had
I also think it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy as well. One of my biggest clients says that he believes women to be the best type of recruiters out there, like
Mm, I
empathy,
agree.
the brain, all those things. But before we get into a kind of gender debate, because that could be a whole
A
episode
whole new episode.
in itself. Is there anything about Tiarna that you've had to kind of unlearn? Any of your tendencies since you've been in recruitment? This is your last recruitment question, actually. Then we get personal.
I think I've had to unlearn being so nice. And that sounds really bad because I think going back to what I said earlier, when my background was always coaching, managing people, doing everything right for the customer, and you're always pleasing. Whereas in recruitment, you've got to kind of have a bit more thick skin and you've got to be a little bit relentless with your approach. And I think if you come in too soft and like a wallflower sometimes, people will just walk over you. And that
Mm.
sounds really sad saying that out loud, but it's the reality. You've got to be a little more assertive and you've got to be able to push back on people. And I think I had to unlearn that because I would always think, oh, no, I'm not being nice. I'm being aggressive. It was like, no, you're not being aggressive. You're being confident and you're being sure about getting something out of that conversation that you need to get. Like you've got to push the nice card aside and you've got to be able to still hold yourself with respect and be kind. And I'm not saying come in and be a bulldozer, like really still be kind, but you've got to be a little bit more forthcoming. And it took me a while to be like that because my natural style is to be quite friendly and probably quite chatty and probably a little bit like, oh, yes, sure, please, thank you. Whereas that just doesn't work in recruitment. You've got to be forthcoming. Don't you
I
think?
think your customer service background probably had a lot of that because in recruitment, we're very much there to influence them ethically. But in
Yes.
customer service, it's about experience, and we can still do the experience part, but you've got to add the influencing part, which is probably what makes you exceptional, actually, because you are using that experience part that a lot of recruiters don't have. They get very transactional. So they don't
Mm.
get that coming away from a candidate call feeling, that warm, fuzzy feeling that they will get from you with a lot of consultants. Like it's so important, that customer focused side. Sometimes people go too far down the influencing side. So it's getting that balance, isn't it?
That balance. It's so true. And I think we're always trying to find that balance. And it's all about you have to flex your style as well, don't you? Because how you speak to some businesses is really different to others. So it's about being that chameleon in the room and being able to quickly read the room and realize, okay, this is the format, this is the setting, and this is how I need to address this audience and
Yeah.
being really adaptive within the moment, which when you're thinking about everything else, it can be quite overwhelming at times, can't it?
And so overwhelming. So
Yeah.
I completely agree with you there. I think one thing since you've started being my exceptional co-host that people say about you, a word that they use is confidence, right? People see you as a very confident person. And I'm curious to know who gave you that confidence? Who would you say is the person that you think of that made you the confident person that you are today?
This is a hard question, Suze,
Someone comes
because
to mind. Someone comes to mind.
well, the first person that comes to my mind is my father, because he's always my role model and he's the biggest influence in my life because of what he's been able to achieve. And he's my source of energy, but he doesn't really know, well, he knows what I do now, but he's not necessarily say, a mentor within recruitment. He's more of just my role model in life. So
Yeah, and this doesn't have to be, I'm more interested in you,
yeah.
like who kind of makes you feel like it's okay to be me. That day maybe I slipped up and that was a bit stupid, but it's okay because I have confidence and I will show up and I will be bright. All those energetic things that you are. Would you say the root of that is your dad?
Well, I would say probably, well, my mum and my father are completely opposite. And my father is very business driven. He comes from a sales background. He couldn't read or write. He left school in grade 9. He's been able to build something from nothing. So he's so inspiring to me. Whereas my mother is super kind. She's super forgiving. My friends would turn up to my house and they would be messy and they would eat the food out of the fridge. And my mum would be like, it's okay. She's so forgiving. So I
Not in
think
my house.
not in there, not in, you'd be allowed to do it into her house, but she wouldn't be allowed to do it in your house, Suze.
Yeah.
You'd be putting your foot down, I'm sure.
Okay.
But yeah,
I remember that.
but I say that because I think I've received from both of them two very different kind of views on life, whereby my mum's the soft, nurturing, kind one, and my dad is more of the kind of assertive decision maker. So I always think like I'm super fortunate to have them two as my parents because I've been able to suck two wonderful gifts from them both and hopefully bring them together in some ways. I'm more like one of them sometimes than the other, which I'll let you guess which one. But I also have like a really inspiring, my auntie's really inspiring to me, my sisters, my friends. I think when you're living abroad I've been abroad for what, nearly 12 years now, your friends become your family. And in Amsterdam, London, and soon to be Dubai is still getting there because it's still early. I've managed to create a tribe around me where I've got really amazing friends like you, Suze, where I would say you were, my tribe in Dubai, and you've unfortunately left me now.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
But having that tribe of friends around you whereby you have a crap day, they pick you up, or they're always a phone call away. Even my friends in Australia, my school friends, were all really, really close. And I'm meeting my best friend in Paris in 3 weeks' time. And I get so excited by that because she's a phenomenal actress that's recovering alcoholic that's fulfilled her dreams, and she's now this celebrity on Home and Away. And as a kid, we grew up watching this show, and I always think, how have you been able to achieve what you've achieved in your life? So if I'm having a bad day or a bad moment, I just call her and I'll pick the phone up and I'll say, hey, it's been a crap week, and we can just talk through things. And I think that to me is along the course, because I've had so many different lives in different cities, I pick up role models depending on where I am through my environment. And that's why community and people is so important to me. And I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine not having friends to call, to voice note you 15,000 times a day, to say, hey, I'm having a bad day.
I love, and can I just say, like, I'm a huge believer in being open with people. And I said this to you in a previous episode. I think if you are able to not worry about people judging you, I mean, to pick 5 people who you think are good people, open up to them, be vulnerable to them. I found this a lot recently, is that the fact that I'm able to do that means I'm automatically closer to people. And it means that they then come to you when there's stuff going on. And then you've got that tribe. Like you said, tribe, it doesn't have to be someone who's there all the time. It can be someone who's far away. But I don't know about you, but when I've spent time with my family, I am so secure. If I've been around my parents or my sister for the weekend, I come out of it feeling so powerful. And I think, yeah, you've got to realize the environment, who's around you, how are they treating you? Do they make you the best version of yourself? And if they do, then remember that and use it. It's a tool in itself.
So true. Well, they say if you hang around with dogs, you get fleas, right? And it's so cliche, but my dad would always say it to me, and I can still hear it in my voice now. When I meet people, I always think, I wonder if my dad's thinking this person's a dog and if I'm going to get fleas. It stayed with me from when I was younger. But when you say that the being around your family, it makes you feel whole, it's so true. And whenever I'm in the UK, I often go and stay with my best friend's husband's family on the Isle of Wight. They've got a really lovely family home. And because you don't have family when you're living abroad, I would go into their house and sit down with them, have a cup of tea. And the minute you're in their home, it just feels like everything's okay because there's just this like sense of familiarity, but also just warmth, having older souls around you that you can just have a conversation with that's just normal and authentic. And yeah, it's so true. Having people around you of all different ages, but all different, I think, influences, as long as they're positive, is so powerful.
I freaking love old people. They've got so much wisdom and knowledge and warmth. A lot of them, anyway.
My grandma's turning 90 in January, if you can believe it.
Oh my gosh, that's
80.
crazy. I have
No.
to be careful though, because I love hanging around with old people, but my kids, well, actually, Sebastian being one, he actually is quite scared of old people. He He thinks they look like witches and stuff. So he was
Oh,
like, ah, and it's really embarrassing because older people always want to talk to him. They always want to go up to him and stuff. So they go up to him and he's like, oh, and I'm like, it's okay. And then like, thank
he'll
God,
have to grow out. He'll grow out of that. That's just a fear factor when he's little.
God,
He'll
he
grow
hasn't said anything yet though. Can you imagine? But yeah, I guess they're not used to it so much. But we talk about failure a lot. And I think what would you say, has there been a moment that sticks out in your mind where you have failed and you've used it for the better good? Because we all know that you can learn as much from your failures, right, as your successes.
like a specific moment. I'm going to try and give you an example on this one. I think I agree with you. I think if we don't fail, we don't grow and we're not learning. And as much as it's awful when you're in the weeds and you're feeling like this is not working, when you come out of it, it's like, oh gosh, that was all kind of for a reason. But when I failed, do you know what? When I left booking.com and I moved into the startup world, I was hired to basically build the customer success team. And I was this fifth employee. And one day I was asked to be like computer coding. The next day I was hiring people. The next day I was sitting in a marketing brief and I was struggling. Like I'm not built to code. Like my brain does not commute to code at all. It just doesn't work that way. But because being in me, I'm like, I'm not going to fail. I'm going to make it work. So I stay up all night watching YouTube clips, trying bringing my friends that were coders, being like, help me do this, just because I wanted to. If it's a problem, I have to fix it. And I got to almost the end of the company actually didn't get its funding and the company didn't launch the website in the end. It all ended. But I got to the end of that year and I felt like I'd failed because I didn't feel like I'd achieved much because what I'd worked on, I didn't really get to see the end results.
Yeah.
And I remember having severe, I would be up at night with panic attacks almost. My chest was hurting, but I didn't know it was my job that was creating that for me because I was so in the zone of just making things work and I have to get the website built and I have to onboard 55 partners. And it was just bump, 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 bump that I wasn't realizing that my body was actually shutting
Are you
down.
a
It was,
perfectionist? Are you a perfectionist, would you say?
I'm not a perfectionist, but I'm super stubborn. If I say I'm going to do something, I have to do it. I would say perfectionist would be I have to do something perfect. I don't have to do things perfect, but I have to solve a task or finish something.
What are you scared of?
What am I scared of? Failing for myself. If I can't do it, then I'm a failure.
And then what?
And then I've let myself down and then I've let people down around me. And then I feel like I just don't feel like there's much self-worth that if I haven't been able to finish it properly or to let people down is a fear.
So yeah, you're a people pleaser.
Maybe, Suze.
Yeah, the task completed is attached to your self-worth. That's so interesting. I feel like I'm getting
I
all there.
think I think that's interesting. I the people. Yeah, maybe. You know what it is? I don't like to disappoint people. I'm also quite fair. So, for example, if you were upsetting me, I wouldn't have any problems in telling you, Suze, like you're wrong and you're upsetting me. Like I'm going to offend you by doing it, but I'm going to tell you. I'm not just yeah, I'm not going to go along and be like, all right, because you're asking me to do this of you, I'm going to do it. I'll be like, doesn't sit right with me. But if I've committed to something like a task or a job or a target or a goal, like if I tell myself I'm billing 200K this year, and I'm getting towards the end of the year and I'm not close to billing 200K, like I'm staying up till 4 a.m. and I'm working because I'm panicking because I'm not going to hit my target. So it's that internal, I guess it's crazy, really. What do you
You
call it?
value the opinion of yourself. Like you hold yourself to high standards, right?
Yeah, way too high sometimes, I think.
I think it's good. I think I always have like a best case scenario target and worst case scenario target, both that stretch me, but it doesn't make me feel like I failed if I don't get the best case scenario. And I normally get the best case scenario, but it doesn't put the pressure on so much.
Yeah, I think that's smart, Suze, because you're managing yourself so you don't end up getting to a burnout or end up getting into a frazzle dazzle state of not sleeping or whatever else happens. So I think that's smart. If you set yourself a target, and I'm going to say 200, but your soft target's 150, do you not feel if you hit the 150, you kind of take your foot off the gas because you've hit that soft target, or are you still going for that 200?
Still go for the 200. Because the soft target is like the first win. Now let's see if I can get to the second win.
Got it. Okay.
It's good enough that I got to the first win, but how awesome would it feel to get to the second win? But it depends, like obviously I've had a lot going on in my life, so which has impacted my expectations of myself. And I'm proud of achieving what I did this year, just despite that. But yeah, I mean, back to you, because we're not talking about me today.
Sorry.
Back to you. What I'm keen to know is something about you that no one else would know, that no one would know listening to this. Something about Tiarna that has happened in your life that no one would know, that is quite significant.
I think that no one would know. Oh gosh, Suze, that's
That
so.
something that you've healed from, let's say.
Okay, well, I'm quite an open book, so I think people probably know. People probably know everything that's going on that are close to me, by the way. Only people that are close to me know. You would know. The obvious thing that comes to mind, obviously, I think I also, like you did, Suze, went through a huge breakup in September. So I'm still healing from that, right? I think, yeah, my whole world got tipped upside down. When you think you're going to be with someone forever, you move countries with them, and then you find out they've cheated on you with one of your friends. It's quite heartbreaking, isn't it? To be very out there and honest and raw right now.
Real.
So what that did is it took me on a crazy wild journey of actually reflecting and slowing down, because I think what I did for so long is I focused a lot on work, and I probably pushed my relationship aside for a bit, which could be the result as to where we were. And I'm only reflecting on that now when it's been 9 months, where I can look back and look at everything that happened. And I think I deprioritized the things that were important to me to probably prioritize work, because I needed to, because I was moving into a new career. It definitely took an impact on my relationship, but there's still never an excuse to get to the situation that we got into. But as a result of that, I'm now running my own business. I'm living in a new country. I've got some of the most inspiring people now around me that I'm meeting daily. And I've got friendships with people like yourself that I would never have had friendships with, because I was so suffocated in that period of my life where I wasn't fulfilling my cup. My friends say it all the time, and they say, "You lost your spark, Tiarna."
Yeah.
And they see me now, and they see me with my spark back. And it's almost brings tears to my eyes, because it's actually super sweet that 9 months on. So for you, Suze, and for anyone listening, I'm hoping can use some inspiration from this, is when it's really grim and it's dark, and it is like that for months, because it was for me, it does end and it does turn around. And you'd be surprised what amazing opportunities can come out of severe heartbreak or hardship or massive life changes. Because for me, I channeled all my energy into self-work. I channeled all my energy into taking a risk and fulfilling my dreams, which is to run my business and to be living in a warm country and be closer to family. And I touch wood. Now it feels almost too good to be true, and I'm almost waiting.
Oh, no. Do you know what? And it's just a great example of bouncing back from,
Yeah.
I'm in the sort of first 3 months really
Yeah.
of my heartbreak. What I've learned is that the bad days, you really notice the good things in the world, like in ways that you wouldn't normally. Like a song will touch you in a way that it never would have touched you before. Or like, well, this is probably bad for you to hear because you're in Dubai, but like the grass is so green and just little things. And you suddenly
Not
think,
that you can appreciate that now, though.
yeah, yeah, but it's like I think ultimately, and everyone who's listening
Mm.
had some relationship with this friendship, co-worker,
Yep. Yep.
someone who's betrayed them at some point. And in every form of betrayal, I think there's always learning. I think it's like a butterfly that lands
I
and it's
love that.
beautiful and then it goes away. That's such a good way of looking at it. And when it goes away, you learn and you reestablish your values and
Yep.
you find the next butterfly.
Yeah, I love that, Sue. But I love butterflies. So I love that butterfly analogy. But it is true. You do appreciate the little things. And I remember I went and saw a coach in the early stages, and she said, "Do one thing for me." She said, "All I want you to do every morning, because every morning I wake up, I have my coffee. Every morning, it sounds really ridiculous." She said, "Just wake up in the morning and just smell your coffee." And what that's doing is it's triggering your senses first thing in the morning, but it's also like a moment for you to kind of just reconnect and appreciate that the love for coffee that you have. And it was such a small thing that I did nearly every day. And it just brought me that joy and happiness in the morning, because I'm like, oh, I've got my coffee and it smells nice. And even though everything else was falling around me and everything was just chaos, I had that moment of to myself where I had my coffee in my hand, and it was a minute of just smelling my coffee and then going on with the day. And it just always brought me back throughout the day. I just kind of bring myself back to that first thing I did in the morning. And it sounds so small, but it really helped me
I love
um, just
that.
getting through things.
I think in any kind of breakdown relationship, any death that or anything that anyone goes through, just seeing the people around you who come to support you, see some of the best things in human beings that you ever, people who contact you, want to connect with you. And it's just, there are many beautiful moments. I sound like I'm going all like born again something. There are many beautiful moments if you look hard enough and reach out to the right people and work on the mindset.
But even where you are now, right? What happens is like I found this, everyone's there for you, and they still are, right? But everyone's really there for you at the beginning. And then all of a sudden, like the show must go on and life goes on, and your trauma or your event is been, moved. Someone else has had something bigger happen to them or whatnot. And it's normal, right? We move on with things. But you're still in the process of grieving, and you're still having these awful days. And I think that's when it becomes more challenging, almost when you're in your position where you're 3 months in, because the show must go on and we've all moved on with our lives and we've been there, right? And we're supporting you, but you're still hurting and you're still grieving. And then sometimes it feels like, gosh, no one's there like they were anymore. And then you start to feel low again. So it's a constant roller coaster, and it's a
Like when
constant
the
battle.
funeral's over, like when the funeral's
Yeah.
over, everyone's like, right, get on again now. And
Yes.
it's often the best time to reach out to people is like 4 or 5 months after.
Yeah, definitely.
That could be when they're having tears and people are like, why are you crying? You're absolutely fine. So it's 100% true. And it's good for people to remember as well. I love that. I love that. Self-help, self-regulate is such a big thing because no one can do that for you, right? You've got to find ways yourself, whether it be therapy, coaching, self-help books. But I love that. I want to know, and this is a really interesting one because I know integrity is such a big part of who you are. Is that right? Like
Yes.
integrity, no,
My
integrity.
integrity. Absolutely. Don't lie to me.
Yes. And you're a very truthful person. So what I'm keen to know is when did you feel in your life afraid to speak the truth, but you did it anyway?
Oh, well, I think first and foremost, I'm quite vocal. I think if we were to call one of my family members right now, they're probably going to be laughing because I'm always the one saying things I probably shouldn't, just to kind of address the elephant in the room. And with my family, when I go home, you come back and you haven't seen them for 6 or 7 months. There's all these things going on, and then you start digging in the weeds and why did this happen and who did this and why didn't you speak to this cousin and why is this person happening? So I'm a bit of a disruptor when I go back and I start opening up the treasure chest, and then all these things come to the
Mhm.
surface. And my sisters will always say, we can always count on you, Tiarna, to come and bring up everything that's been brought up again. But the reason I do it, and it's definitely, I've become better at it. I'm trying to learn to zip it because I don't think it's hurt. I don't think it's any benefit to anyone to always say what you're thinking because you do hurt people and there is a time and place. And I've done that many times before where I've upset people and I'm like, I should have said that. I'm so sorry. So, but what I do value,
You're genuine, you wear your heart on your sleeve.
yeah, and I do value that my closest friends are the ones that I know if I'm kind of derailing, they're going to call me and they're going to tell me, and I love them for that. So I like to hope and I try that if my friends are ever having a moment of like crisis and they want some honest feedback or advice, they're going to call me and I'm going to give it to them. It does come at the cost of you're going to upset them and you're going to hurt them. But I think you've always got to have people in your life that are going to be truthful to you and they're going to give you the honest, hard truth, even if you're not going to like it. I do think that that's really important, but it does come with hurting people on the way and upsetting people and saying things to people they didn't want to hear. And then you're in this kind of situation of having to
But I
peacemake.
think if people ask for your opinion, they have to understand that it will be given and they might not like it, right? And the
Yeah.
one people shouldn't do, and I learned this quite recently in psychology, is like you shouldn't give your opinion without being asked because essentially it could be said to be manipulation. So I've got this thing now that I always do with friends when they ask me for advice. I say, do you want to know my opinion or do you want me to listen? Which role do you want me to play here? Do you want me to be the listener and to validate you, or do you want my opinion? And sometimes people have said, I want you just to listen and validate. So you're like, okay. And it can be really hard to know that what they're saying is wrong, but they haven't given you the permission, and that can be quite difficult.
I love how delicate you are with that though, Suze. I could learn something from you from that because you are very delicate at reading the room. I can be a little bit sometimes boisterous. And I think that's a good question to ask for permission before doing it, because otherwise you can really upset people and they didn't ask for it. And that's not nice. And that's never the intention of, for anyone that's listening that's like me, I'm sure there's a lot of people that are like me. It's never our intention to upset people. It's often coming from a good place, but yeah, the delivery is everything, right? And timing is everything. So you've got to be delicate with when you address certain topics. For
Yeah.
sure. Doing what
So
you do and asking permission.
you've never upset me, by the way, but it's more kind of like, yeah, it sounds like that's the sort of moment. If someone's coming to you for advice, you will be brutally honest. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. And it's one of the things that I think makes you a genuine person and a consultative recruiter, which is what every recruiter should be, right? But what I'm curious to know as well, if you were to go back and be 22 again, I love this question. What one bit of advice would you give your younger self?
I love this question because I love my 20s. I love being 22. The 20s were my
Amazing.
love
Ah,
my 20s. I love my 20s. What would I, like I've said, I've loved my 20s 3 or 4 times. I generally love my 20s. The best time of my life. I think when I hit 30, everything just changed, but I just loved my being 20. And what I would give my 20-year-old self is stop damn worrying. I think we've got our whole life to worry. And if I look back and when I've generally loved my 20s and I was having so much fun, but I was still sometimes worrying about stuff that didn't matter. I mean, I'm 22 years old and I was worried about things that were going to happen to me 5 to 8 years later, which don't get me wrong, you have to set yourself up for success. You don't want to be trained like a complete train wreck and erratic. But if I could go back now, I would have said, you wasted so much time worrying and none of that worry has actually even transpired to anything. So I would say to my 22-year-old yourself, like enjoy those 20s because you never get them back. Once you turn 30, you'll never be 20 again. And that's sad. That's really sad. And I would say if you want to do anything adventurous, and the best thing I ever did was go traveling for a year because I'm
Yeah,
still going to do that again at some point in my life, but it's going to be different doing it in my 50s than it was in my 20s, you know?
yeah, yeah.
So I'll do it in my 50s and I'll be like, great. But if I had never done it in my 20s, I would be kicking myself that I wasn't as full of beans and I was able to do all the things I did, jump off cliffs and paraglide and jump into water holes with free flowing water, all that stuff you just can't do when you're older. So I would say if you've got any desire to do anything adventurous or take any risks, the 20s is when you do it, and
Yeah.
especially 22.
I love that. Such a good thing. And it does really make you reflect, doesn't it? I mean, like in your 20s, like you said, the things you worry about, all I cared about was, do people like me? Do they like me? And one day I just woke up and thought, whatever I do, some people are just never going to like me. And that's okay.
Never please
Ultimately,
everyone.
an
God.
uncomfortable truth of life. No one is going to like you all the time. But I'm curious now. I've asked you about your 20s. What do you think is the best thing about being in your 30s?
Oh, okay. Well, there is something actually. I think you know yourself a lot more. I think to your point, Susie, everyone wanting to like me, that's a thing when you're in your 20s. You're still very insecure about yourself. I think we're very hypersensitive towards people think. Well, when I hit 30, I felt like I was just like super responsible. All of a sudden, you're adulting, you're doing all these adult things, and you kind of care less about what people think. I know my grandma and my parents, they always say, well, wait till you're my age, wait till you're in your 70s, and you really won't care what people think. And I generally believe it because I noticed the difference from, say, 23 to 33 in terms of not letting the small stuff bother me anymore. Whereas when I was 23, I would have probably lost sleep over some of the stuff that I am faced with now, with people saying things or someone not returning one of my text messages or being rejected by a client or a candidate. All that stuff probably hurt a bit more when you're in your 20s because you haven't really built that wall around you to be able to bounce back from negativity or bullying or whatever you were exposed to. So I like being more comfortable with myself. I like that you kind of have probably less friends, but you stick to probably the good friends in your 30s. When I was in my 20s, my friends used to call me a friend collector because I would have like just friends everywhere. And I mean, half of them weren't my friends. They were just people that I was acquaintance with and I was just social. So I'd always have people around. Whereas now I'm a bit more selective with my
Really?
friends.
So anyone who's listening to this, I've been out with Tiarna. She will just pick up friends like
I'm still a
tomorrow.
collector.
It's like in the last couple of months. I want to know, how does anyone know that they really are a friend of Tiarna and that they haven't just been a pickup friend?
Oh, you'll know, Suze. Well, I think you have friends for different, this is cliche, but friends for different reasons and seasons. So
Mm.
got your core friends that you've had since you were younger, when hopefully a lot of us still have them. I know I do. And there's, I can count them on my hand. And then you've got your friends that you meet traveling, or you got your friends you meet through work, and they all give you something different. And if I don't like people now, I just won't hang out with them, right? So I like you, Suze. I hang out with you and I talk to you because I like you. You didn't, if
Accepted.
you text me and I didn't want to hang out with you, I wouldn't be hanging out with you because it's just
Ghosting
about
here.
being still.
No ghosting here from
No
Tiarna.
ghosting.
I love it. Oh, that's so funny. I agree. I think you know your values, you know what you value in a
Yeah.
person. I actually think people should choose their husband or wife like in their 30s, not in their
Like,
20s, because we changed so much. And now I look at my first boyfriend and I never would have dated him now, but yeah, because you learn who you are and what's important to you. And
yeah.
sometimes that doesn't become apparent until you're a bit older. But what I would like to know on that note is if you were to sort of pin down your three whys, your three values, and I don't want you to digress, you have to come up with three things that make Tiarna Tiarna. What would they be?
So three values that make me me. Community,
Yeah.
huge, 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 huge. Sense of community, sense of belonging makes me me. If I had no community, I generally wouldn't be me. That's just simple. Honesty and integrity. I highly regard people that are just honest and truthful and real. And I tend to move away from people that aren't quite
Yeah.
quickly. So last but not least, oh, I'm on the spot here. I would say also happiness. I think, and that's kind of broad, I know, but being able to be happy in what I do, being able to get up in the morning and have my health and be happy to move around, go to the gym and seeing people around me happy, that gives me energy. So I love seeing people being happy. I like being happy. And I think anything that we do that interjects with the course of our life that stops us from being happy kind of has a dominoes effect in all areas of our life.
Yeah.
So,
I love
um,
that. So community, honesty and integrity and happiness. Can I give you my
yes,
opinion?
yes. you're going to give
Or
me
want me
yours.
to
I'd love to know
listen.
yours, but this isn't about you, unfortunately, and I want to know.
Shut up, Susan. But no, I want to tell you what I think about you. So I think you were like the only person I've ever met, right? Don't take this the wrong way. This might be her last episode if she gets upset, who has a complete mix of being intense yet chilled. I didn't think those two words could ever be put into like one person, but they are so like you managed to be both of them, but you've got that confidence, you've got that energy, but also you've got quite a nice vulnerability about you that makes people warm to you. And I think that kind of I don't give a shit type thing, which is it's inspiring and it's empowering. And I think you are a very empowering human being. And it'll be interesting to see how this journey with your business takes you and accelerates you as a person. It's exciting, I think.
Oh, that's so sweet, Suze. Thank you. That's fine. It's always awkward receiving compliments. And one of my therapists is like, you need to get better at receiving compliments and just learn to say thank you. So I'm really practicing that skill right now and just saying thank you whilst I'm squirming inside. That's really kind of you. I think some people might say bipolar based on what you've just described initially.
No, not at all, because I think
Just
you're
kidding.
consistent, and I think that's really positive as well. And in a recruiter, you need to be consistent, right? So you wouldn't have been in that way. But has anything you've moved to Dubai? It's been how long now? 4 months?
Yeah, 5 almost.
Oh my word, crazy. Has anything changed? What have you changed your mind about in the last year, having moved to Dubai? Is there one thing that you've changed your mind about in life?
Well, I appreciate that seasonal depression can be a thing because I've noticed my happiness levels are higher given that I'm not in the cold anymore, which is something that I didn't
Wow.
impacting me for sure, living in Amsterdam and London. So that's something that I've observed. Just day to day energy is higher from being having sunlight for me. And I think maybe because I'm Australian, I'm used to the sun. For all those years being away from it, it would like zap me, and winters were really long for me and really grey. So that's something that I've definitely noticed. I've met some really cool people out here. And what's been really inspiring is people are just hustling and cracking on with things and they're making shit happen, And I don't want to say we isn't everyone, but what I think I was used to in London, and this is no offense to London, and this could be me and not people, and I might be deflecting. It felt like everyone was kind of just making excuses for not getting things done. And all of a sudden, it's like, how's your day? Yeah, it's okay. And petrol's gone up, taxes have gone up. It's always just felt like a bit of negativity. There is problems here, don't get me wrong. But what I've felt since being here is the general vibration of people is much higher, and people are all here for a reason, and they all love bringing people together and networking people, and people aren't afraid to wave at you to say hi on the street. And you go into our co-working spot and one of the ladies will go, oh, have you met the recruiters on the 6th floor? I'm going to introduce you to them. You should meet them, and they'll take you there. They'll introduce you to them. That never happened to me in a co-working spot in London.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, it would be like, oh, yeah, go and, smile and say hi. It's just that extra level of service that happens here has made me feel really like blessed to be around positive people. And everyone seems to be really out there to help each other. And like, there's also I've met some really quirky people out here that, have openly spoken about having, neurodiversity and ADHD. And I'm like, I also have ADHD and I'm all over the show sometimes, but it's almost like there's a sense of security to be who you want to be here. And it's not so critical and it's not so much judgment happening. And I feel like that's a safe space. So for me, it's just about realizing I think life's too short, and if you're not happy, up and move. There's options. Come to Dubai if you want to get in the sun, or move to Australia if you want to swim with sharks and have kangaroos, as everyone keeps asking me if that
It's
is that
not as scary as people think. So many people say,
Oh,
you move abroad, you're so brave. It's actually not as scary as people think. And yeah, I think that's super inspiring. Completely agree about the weather, completely agree about Dubai and the expat community, 100%. Thank you. I feel like there's so much more to unpick, which we will hopefully unpick gradually over future episodes from you. But I've really enjoyed asking you all these questions. And thank you for being vulnerable enough to answer them candidly. Is brilliant. And I think anyone who's listening to this will feel like they know you that bit better from hearing what
thank you, Suze. You're such a great host and you're really good at keeping people feel calm. And I appreciate you. Thank you. That was
calm and
raw.
intense all
It's
at the same time.
calm and intense. That's why we love you, because you are a roller coaster of emotions all in one.
Anyway, lots of love. And yeah, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this episode.